You can look up the definition of conflict in pretty much any dictionary and you'll find a few different versions of definitions there. And especially if you move outside the world of dictionaries, it becomes sort of a jungle of what does conflict really mean? What is it? I think especially about a training I did some years back. It was a group dynamics training that went on for 5 days with a group of about 10 people. So there were plenty of opportunities during these 5 days to have conflicts in that group. And at one stage during the training, we came to talk about what is conflict? What does it mean? What is the definition of a conflict? And one woman in the group, she said, for me, conflict is when you have different opinions about something. Then another participant in the group, also a woman, said, no, that's not conflict at all. I can go to a restaurant with my husband and we can throw forks and food at each other, and that's not a conflict. It's just a matter of different opinions. She said, for me, conflict is when you get to nuclear weapons. When you start using nuclear weapons, then we can talk about a conflict. So obviously, talking about conflict management with these two people would have been quite a different story when it comes to what is a conflict and how would you then manage it. So I think a key important lesson in that is to take some time with your team to talk about what conflict means to all of you, because conflicts will arise, I believe, when people come together. So clearing out what is conflict to you, what is conflict to me, can be quite useful. Like I said, I've encountered many different definitions of conflict. Today, I like to define conflicts as when two incompatible strategies to achieve a need collide. So what is a strategy and what is a need then could be helpful here, right? So a strategy is something that we do, a behavior, something we do in order to fulfill a need. And a strategy is tied into time and space, so it's dependent on a location, on things, so to speak. While needs are universal. For example, needs can be the need for exercise, the need for food, the need for freedom, the need for love, connection, so forth. Now, to fulfill, for example, a need for freedom, I could go buy a new car. That could fulfill my need for freedom. So that's the strategy, is buying the car. Of course, there are different strategies to get to freedom, but that's one example of when I have a strategy, buying a car, that can lead me to fulfill my need for freedom. And like I said, a strategy is dependent upon time and space, so it wouldn't be possible for everyone in the world to go out tomorrow and buy themselves a new car. There just wouldn't be enough cars manufactured. We wouldn't have time to manufacture enough cars. There's just a physical limitation to that. While it would be at least theoretically possible that every person in the world could tomorrow have their need for freedom fulfilled through different strategies, of course. So needs are universal. The problem then occurs when two different people have strategies that are incompatible. Let's say I have a need for freedom, so I schedule my work life to be very flexible. That's my strategy, is a flexible work schedule, so that fulfills my need for freedom. And then I have a coworker who has a need for security, for example, that he or she fulfills with a different strategy, with having a very organized project management, really detailed, with structured meetings and so forth. Those two strategies, sooner or later, they're most likely, if we work together in a project, they're going to collide. They're going to crash, and that's where we get the conflict. That's where the conflict occurs. And the problem remains, the conflict remains, in my experience, as long as we stay on the strategy level. We need to be able to look past the strategies and look at the needs behind. When we can look at the needs behind, we can build the trust to have a more open communication. Then we can also look at managing creating other strategies, see what other creative strategies can we find to fulfill that need. But here now again then, we were talking about the definition of conflict. So my definition of conflict, incompatible strategies on the way to fulfilling a need, and that collision where the crash happens between those strategies, that's where we get the conflict.